In my previous life, when my cousin was pregnant, she specially brought celebratory cakes to our house. After the whole family ate them, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, my father was scammed in an investment, and I was pushed into a lake and drowned. Opening my eyes again and seeing the celebratory cakes my cousin handed me, I smiled and accepted them. This time, I'll make sure you die a horrible death. The suffocating sensation still lingered in my throat, the feeling of icy lake water flooding my nostrils and lungs as if it had just happened. I could even vividly remember how that hand pressed against the back of my head, forcing me relentlessly into the depths of the lake with terrifying strength, completely unlike that of a woman supposedly pregnant. I jerked my eyes open, the sunlight streamed in brightly, and the osmanthus tree outside the window was in full bloom, its sickly sweet fragrance drifting into the living room with the breeze. I sat dumbfounded on the sofa, still holding a cup of warm lemon water. This was my home. The cross-stitch Mom loved most hung on the wall, a family photo of the three of us sat on the TV stand, and the aroma of pork rib soup wafted from the kitchen. Everything was so familiar, yet so distant. I looked down at my hands, pale and smooth, without a single scar. My phone screen lit up, displaying the date, July 8th, July 8th. That date was like a knife, plunging straight into my heart. My entire body began to tremble, not from fear, but from hatred. In my past life, it was on this very day that Su Wanqing, with her 5-month baby bump, knocked on our door with a box of celebratory cakes. Smiling sweetly, she said they were auspicious cakes, made by her mother-in-law, meant to bring good fortune, and she had specially brought them for our family to try. My mother ate them and was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer 3 months later. My father ate them and soon after invested his life savings into a so-called friend recommended project, losing everything, and I was pushed into a lake on a rainy night, dying without even seeing the face of my killer. But I knew who it was. I had always known. It was just that I had been too foolish back then, foolish enough to mistake a wolf in sheep's clothing for my closest kin. The doorbell rang. Ding dong. The crisp sound echoed through the living room like a death knell. I tightened my grip on the cup in my hand, my knuckles turning white from the pressure, my heart pounding wildly in my chest. But I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. Mom peeked out from the kitchen, her apron still stained with grease, and said cheerfully, "It must be your cousin. She called this morning saying she had good news to share." Good news? I sneered inwardly. It was indeed good news. For Su Wanqing, pushing our family into hell was her greatest achievement. "I'll get the door," I said, standing up, my voice eerily steady to my own surprise. As I walked to the entrance, I adjusted my hair in the hallway mirror. The face reflected back was young and clean, but the eyes were as cold as someone who had crawled back from hell, because I had. The moment the door opened, Su Wanqing's sweet, gentle face appeared before me. She wore a loose maternity dress, her long hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes curving into crescents when she smiled, looking utterly harmless. In her hand was a red gift box, one I knew all too well. In my past life, it had been our family's death warrant. "Cousin," Su Wanqing exclaimed warmly, grabbing my hand, "it's been so long, I've missed you so much." Her palm was warm and soft, but it felt like being entwined by a venomous snake. Yet I didn't pull away. I smiled, sweeter and more sincere than she did, even crinkling the corners of my eyes. Inside, I told myself, "Su Wanqing, you've been acting for years. Starting today, it's my turn to take the stage." "Cousin," I warmly grasped her hand in return, my gaze settling on her belly. "Oh my, your belly is so big already. Come in and sit down. Don't tire yourself out." I ushered her into the living room. Mom came out of the kitchen carrying a plate of fruit and couldn't stop smiling the moment she saw Su Wanqing. "Wanqing's here. Sit, sit, look at that round belly. It's definitely going to be a big, healthy boy." "Auntie, don't trouble yourself. I just came to visit," Su Wanqing said sweetly as she settled onto the sofa, placing a box of wedding cakes on the coffee table. "These are blessing cakes my mother-in-law specially made. They have longan and red dates inside. Very auspicious. She insisted I bring some for you and Uncle to try. Here it comes." My heart skipped a beat. Mom reached for the box with a cheerful laugh, saying, "Your mother-in-law is too kind. We really shouldn't." "Mom," I interrupted, pressing down on her hand, my tone as casual as if I were commenting on the weather. "No rush." Mom paused and looked at me. I smiled nonchalantly. "Cousin doesn't visit often. Let's chat first. By the way, cousin, is it a boy or a girl this time?" Su Wanqing's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she recovered. We don't know yet. The doctor said we'll have to wait a bit longer to tell. I nodded, my gaze drifting subtly over her belly. I saw cousin-in-law the other day. The words dropped like a pebble into still water. Su Wanqing's hand, holding the water glass, froze for a split second, though she quickly regained composure. I saw it, the flicker of panic in her eyes. Oh, she took a sip of water, her tone light as if discussing a stranger. Where did you see him? At the mall, I said, staring straight at her face, enunciating each word. He was with a woman. They looked very close. The air in the living room froze instantly. Mom's expression changed, and so did Su Wanqing's. But Su Wanqing was still Su Wanqing. She adjusted her expression in just 2 seconds, even managing to force a helpless smile. That's a colleague from his company. I know, they were working on a project together and spent a lot of time together during that period. Is that so? I smiled. Then I can rest easy. I thought cousin-in-law might have someone else outside. How could that be? Su Wanqing set down her glass and gently placed a hand on her stomach. He treats me very well. I nodded and didn't press further. This was just the beginning. I wouldn't play all my cards at once. That would be too easy for her. I wanted her to fall slowly, bit by bit, from the heights she was so proud of. In our past life, when she pushed our family into hell, she didn't give us a quick end. Auntie, this cake is so beautifully made. I changed the subject, redirecting my attention back to the wedding cake on the coffee table. Su Wanqing visibly relaxed, quickly opening the box. Really? My mother-in-law is especially skilled at making these. You guys should try some. As the box opened, a sweet, cloying fragrance wafted out. The cake was beautifully shaped, golden on the surface, with a Fu character printed on top, appealing at first glance. But amidst that sugary scent, I detected a faint, almost imperceptible odor, so subtle it was nearly undetectable. Yet, as someone who had returned from the dead, I knew what was hidden inside that cake. In my previous life, doctors had said my mother's stomach cancer had come on mysteriously, not like a typical illness. And before I died, I had once seen a small bottle on Su Wanqing's vanity, with English writing on it. I hadn't had time to find out what it was before she discovered me. That night, I was pushed into the lake. Smells delicious. I picked up a piece of the pastry, brought it to my nose to smell, then turned to Su Wanqing. Cousin, you should have won first. Su Wanqing's smile froze. She instinctively touched her stomach. I'm pregnant. The doctor said I shouldn't eat anything too sweet. Oh, I see. I placed the pastry back in the box, my smile unchanged. Then let your husband have a taste too. Such a good thing. We can't enjoy it all ourselves. Mom, let's keep 2 pieces, and the rest we'll give to your husband and mother-in-law to take home. Mom, not understanding, nodded along. Yes, yes, such a good thing. Let the in-laws taste it too. Su Wanqing's expression finally changed. Though she tried hard to conceal it, I could see fine beads of sweat forming on her forehead. And no need. She quickly waved her hand. We still have plenty at home. These are just specially brought for you. But how can that be? I warmly took her hand. Cousin, you've been so kind to us. We must show our appreciation. Here's what we'll do. We'll accept these pastries. But another day, Mom and I will personally visit your home, bring something, and pay our respects to your mother-in-law. We'll also get to taste the pastries you make. As I spoke, my eyes remained fixed on her face. Su Wanqing's lips trembled slightly, her gaze darting away, unable to meet mine directly. She was guilty. In my previous life, I hadn't noticed these details, because back then I regarded her as my closest sister and never doubted her. But now, every subtle expression on her face told me something was wrong. Then that's fine. Su Wanqing forced a smile, standing up. It's getting late. I should go back now. I have some things to take care of at home. So soon? Mom was a little surprised. Stay for dinner before you leave. No thanks, Auntie. My mother-in-law is waiting for me back home. I didn't try to stop her. I walked her to the door. At the moment she stepped over the threshold, I suddenly spoke. Cousin. She turned back. I looked into her eyes, my voice as light as a breeze. Do you believe in karma? Su Wanqing froze. She stood at the door, the afternoon sunlight spilling over her, illuminating that gentle face with clarity, but in her pupils, I saw fear. What? Nothing, I smiled, innocent and pure. I just meant, cousin, since you're so kind, good karma will surely come your way. Heaven is watching. Su Wanqing forced a smile, her movements stiff as she turned away. I stood at the door, watching her step into the elevator. The moment the doors closed, I wiped the smile from my face. I returned to the living room, where Mom was about to put away the box of wedding cakes. "Mom," I called out to her, "give me the cakes." "What's wrong?" I didn't explain. I took the box from her hands, walked into the kitchen, and took out the delicate fortune cakes one by one. There were 8 in total. In my previous life, the 3 of us ate 7, and the last one I took to school and shared with my desk mate. Later, my desk mate dropped out of school, saying she had stomach problems. At that time, I didn't connect the illness to anything, because no one would suspect a pregnant woman giving out fortune cakes. I put the cake into a plastic bag, sealed it tightly, and placed it in the bottom drawer of the refrigerator. "Why are you putting it in the fridge? Aren't you going to eat it now?" Mom asked from behind me. "Save it," I said. "Maybe I'll need it later." Mom didn't press further. She always trusted me. I closed the fridge door, leaned against the cabinet, and closed my eyes. Scenes from my past life flooded into my mind like a tide. I remembered my mother during chemotherapy, her hair falling out in clumps, her body reduced to nothing but bones. She lay in the hospital bed, holding my hand and saying, "No, no, Mom is fine. Mom wants to see you get married," but she never made it to that day. I remembered my father sitting in the living room, his hair turning white overnight. He had been swindled out of his life savings and was left with a mountain of debt. Debt collectors came to harass him, driving him to the brink of jumping off a building. His entire life's pride and dignity were crushed into pieces. I remembered that cold night, the lake water flooding into my mouth, my nose, my lungs. I wanted to scream for help, but the more I opened my mouth, the more water rushed in. I struggled desperately, but that hand gripped me like an iron clamp. The last image was the shattered moonlight on the lake surface, so cold, so beautiful. I opened my eyes and took a deep breath. No, this life will be different. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number, one I had accidentally memorized in my previous life, belonging to a private investigator. After my father was scammed in the past, he had wanted to hire him to track down the fraudster, but by then we had no money left. "Hello, is this Mr. Chen? I'd like to hire you to investigate someone." After hanging up, I dialed another number. "Hello, brother-in-law, it's Ruoyan. Are you free tomorrow night? I'd like to treat you to dinner." The man on the other end hesitated for a moment, but eventually agreed. I hung up the phone, a cold smirk forming on my lips. "Su Wanqing, do you think I don't know your biggest secret? The child in your belly isn't your husband's. In my previous life, I only discovered this secret on my deathbed. Too late, of course, but now, this secret will become the sharpest knife in my hand." Dinner time came, and Dad returned. He looked in good spirits, even humming a tune while eating. Mom asked what had him so happy, and he said an old friend had introduced him to a high-return investment project, and he was planning to invest part of his savings. My hand trembled. It had happened before, in the past. That so-called old friend was actually introduced to Dad by Su Wanqing. She claimed he was a relative from her family, an expert in investment and financial management, and many people had made money following him. Dad trusted Su Wanqing, just as our whole family trusted her. The result, that fraudster stole half of Dad's life savings and vanished without a trace, and when our family was ruined, Su Wanqing didn't even call once. "Dad," I put down my chopsticks, "that old friend, does he have the surname Zhao?" Dad paused. "How do you know?" "I heard about him," I said, looking into his eyes, my voice calm but firm. "Dad, you can't invest in that project." "Why not?" "Because it's a scam." Dad laughed and waved his hand. "What do you kids know? Uncle Zhao has been in investment for over 10 years. How could he be a fraud? His surname isn't Zhao," I said slowly and clearly. "His name is Zhao Yongqiang. He was given a suspended sentence 3 years ago for fraud, and was released just last year. He's not an investment expert at all. He's a fraud." Dad's smile froze. How did you know?" "A classmate's father is a policeman, and I asked him to look into it." I lied, but the lie was convincing enough for Dad. Mom's face also changed as she put down her chopsticks and looked at me. "Ruoyan, you can't say such things lightly." "I'm not saying it lightly." I took out my phone and showed them the preliminary investigation results the private detective had just sent me. "See for yourselves." Dad took the phone, and the more he read, the worse his expression became. The report clearly documented Zhao Yongqiang's criminal record, his true identity, and the people he had recently been in contact with. Among them was Su Wanqing's name. "Wanqing." Dad raised his head in disbelief. "How could she? Cousin might have been deceived too." I didn't rush to expose Su Wanqing because the time wasn't right yet. But this Xiao Yongqiang is absolutely untrustworthy. Dad fell silent, he handed the phone back to me and didn't speak for a long time. The atmosphere at the dinner table grew heavy. Mom looked at me, then at Dad, hesitating to speak. After a long while, Dad finally said, "I understand, we won't invest this money." I let out a sigh of relief. The first hurdle was cleared, but I knew this was just the beginning. Su Wanqing's schemes didn't stop here. Her malice toward our family ran much deeper than I had imagined. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. Moonlight seeped through the gaps in the curtains, casting a silvery glow on the floor. I thought of that night in my past life. The moonlight on the lake had been just as cold and bright, like shattered glass scattered everywhere. I took out my phone and reviewed the information the private detective had sent. Su Wanqing, 26 years old, married for 2 years, her husband a small-time boss at a building materials company. On the surface, she seemed to live an enviable life, with a car, a house, doting in-laws, and a husband who adored her. But the report also revealed something interesting. Her husband, Zhang Mingyuan, had been frequenting a certain club over the past 6 months, always accompanied by a young woman, and the owner of that club happened to be Su Wanqing's ex-boyfriend. Even more coincidentally, the timing of Su Wanqing's pregnancy aligned perfectly with the 2 months her husband was away on a business trip. I committed every detail to memory, piecing them together like a puzzle. Su Wanqing, you schemed your way into the Zhang family, but the child in your belly isn't even a Zhang. If the Zhang family ever found out, everything you have now would vanish into thin air. And that box of wedding sweets you sent, it probably wasn't just aimed at our family. Are you also afraid that one day the truth will come out, so you're trying to eliminate anyone who might know something, one by one? In my past life, our whole family treated you with utmost sincerity, considering you the closest of kin. When you were pregnant, my mom would often bring you homemade soup. When you were short on money, my dad lent it to you without hesitation. And how did you repay us? With the stomach cancer that made mom die in agony, the scam that drove dad to the brink of jumping off a building, and the murderous hands that sent me to the bottom of the lake. Su Wanqing, just how much do you hate us? Or perhaps, our very existence is your biggest obstacle. I turned off my phone, lying wide-eyed in the darkness. I wasn't in a hurry. In this lifetime, I had all the time in the world. The pain you inflicted upon us, I would return it to you tenfold, 100-fold. I wouldn't let you die too easily. I wanted you to watch, helplessly, as the things you cared about most were stripped away one by one, just like how you once watched our family fall apart. The sweet, cloying fragrance of osmanthus drifted in through the window again, reminding me of the taste of those fortune cookies. I closed my eyes, a faint smile curling at the corners of my lips. Su Wanqing, the game has only just begun. For the dinner with my cousin-in-law the day after tomorrow, I'd already planned what to say. I wasn't going to outright tell him the truth. That would be too boring. All I needed was to plant a seed of doubt in his mind and let it take root and grow on its own. I'd interacted with Zhang Mingyuan a few times in my past life. His most defining traits were his paranoia and obsession with saving face. His affection for Su Wanqing wasn't so much love as it was pride. She was gentle, beautiful, virtuous, the kind of wife everyone praised him for marrying. But what if he discovered this perfect wife had been unfaithful? With his temperament, he would destroy Su Wanqing with his own hands. No need for me to lift a finger. That was exactly what I wanted. To let Su Wanqing taste the bitterness of betrayal by the one closest to her. But before meeting my cousin-in-law, there was one more thing I had to do. Those fortune cookies. Tomorrow, I was going to find someone. In my past life, my mother's attending doctor had once mentioned knowing a retired traditional Chinese medicine expert who specialized in rare, slow-acting poisons. Back then, I hadn't paid it any mind because it never occurred to me that my mother had been murdered. But now, things were different. I was going to have those cookies tested. I needed to know what was hidden inside, what kind of poison could turn a perfectly healthy person into a terminal gastric cancer patient within 3 months. More importantly, I needed evidence. When the time was right, this evidence would be the final straw that crushed Su Wanqing. I clenched my fists in the darkness. Mom, Dad, this time, I won't let anyone hurt you. In my past life, you protected me. In this life, it's my turn to protect you. The moonlight outside the window gradually dimmed, and I finally felt a hint of drowsiness. Before closing my eyes, I silently thought to myself, Su Wanqing, you'd better sleep soundly, because starting tomorrow, your nightmare begins, just like the one you gave me in my past life. Only this time, the one having the nightmare will be you. The next afternoon, I arranged to meet my cousin's husband, Zhang Mingyuan, at a tea house. Choosing a tea house was deliberate. Zhang Mingyuan was a man who cared about appearances. If I'd suggested a cafe or restaurant, he would have thought it wasn't classy enough. He loved being flattered, loved the feeling of being treated like a big shot. In my past life, I couldn't figure this out and just thought he was a somewhat arrogant businessman. Now, looking back, he was full of flaws. When I arrived, Zhang Mingyuan was already seated in the private room. He was wearing a dark blue polo shirt, his wristwatch gleaming conspicuously, his hair meticulously combed. Seeing me enter, he stood up with a smile. Ruoyun, it's been a while, brother-in-law. I smiled and sat down, placing my bag beside me. Sorry to keep you waiting, no need for formalities, we're family, he said, pouring me a cup of tea with practiced ease, the gesture of someone accustomed to socializing. What brings you to invite me out today? Nothing major. I took a sip of tea. It's just that cousin came by the other day to deliver wedding sweets, and I thought it was time to return the gesture. I also wanted to check in on her and her mother-in-law. She's been pregnant for so long, and I haven't properly expressed my care. My words were flawless. Zhang Mingyuan's smile deepened. Wanqing often tells me you're the most thoughtful cousin. Since she got pregnant, her temper's been worse. Sometimes even I get the cold shoulder, but she always smiles when she mentions you. I sneered inwardly. Su Wanqing smiled when she talked about me. In her eyes, I was just a naive fool, easy to deceive, easy to manipulate. She probably never imagined that one day this fool would turn around and bite her back. Cousin has always been good to me, and I remember it all. I set down my teacup, my tone light, as if chatting about trivial matters. By the way, brother-in-law, how's business lately? Not bad, he said modestly, though his face betrayed his pride. Just landed a few big orders, should make a decent profit in the second half of the year. That's great. I paused, feigning casualness. I heard cousin's been dabbling in investments recently. Zhang Mingyuan froze. Investments? What investments? She didn't tell you. I widened my eyes. Pretending surprise, she introduced an investment project to our family, said the returns were exceptionally high. My dad almost put money into it. Zhang Mingyuan's brows furrowed. It was clear that Su Wanqing hadn't mentioned this to him. What kind of project? Who introduced it? His tone became slightly more serious. A man named Xiao Yongqiang, I replied cautiously, observing his expression. He's said to be a relative from my cousin's maternal side, with over a decade of experience in investment and financial management, supposedly very skilled. Zhang Mingyuan's expression darkened for a brief moment before quickly returning to normal. He smiled and waved it off, saying, "Oh, that guy. I know him. Wanqing mentioned him to me. He really is in finance." Liar, I sneered inwardly. His expression had already betrayed him. Su Wanqing had never mentioned Zhao Yongqiang to him, and that fleeting shadow in his eyes just now revealed his displeasure at her acting behind his back. This was exactly the effect I wanted. I didn't need to spill everything at once. I just needed to plant a seed of doubt in his mind, to make him start suspecting that Su Wanqing was hiding things from him. The deeper the rift between them, the easier it would be for me to act later. Well, that's a relief, I said with a smile, not pressing further. It's tough for my cousin to worry about these things while she's pregnant. Cousin-in-law, you should take good care of her. Of course, Zhang Mingyuan replied, though his gaze had already grown distant. I didn't say anything more. The seed had been sown. Time would take care of the rest. As I was leaving, Zhang Mingyuan suddenly called out to me, "Ruoyun, about that project you mentioned earlier. Did your father end up investing?" I turned back and met his eyes. "No, I thought it seemed unreliable and advised him against it." Zhang Mingyuan looked surprised. "You understand investments?" "Not really," I chuckled, "but I believe there's no such thing as a free lunch. If the returns sound too good to be true, it's probably a trap. You've been in business for so many years. You must know that better than I do." Zhang Mingyuan fell silent for 2 seconds before nodding. "You're right." I didn't say anything else and turned to leave the tea house. The moment I stepped outside, I took a deep breath. The sunlight was harsh, and the streets were bustling as usual. But I knew something had quietly shifted. The seed had been planted. Now all I had to do was wait for it to take root. On my way home, I made a detour to the herbal medicine market in the west of the city. In my past life, while my mother was undergoing chemotherapy, I'd met an old traditional Chinese medicine practitioner at the hospital. His surname was Hu, and before retiring, he had worked at the provincial TCM hospital. specializing in difficult and rare diseases. Once, during a casual conversation, he had mentioned offhand that there was a rare, slow-acting poison on the market, extracted from a certain medicinal herb. In small doses, it wouldn't kill immediately, but it would erode the stomach lining and induce cancer. Back then, I dismissed it as just a story, but now I understood why my mother's stomach cancer in my past life had struck so suddenly and so viciously. The doctors called it late stage, but she'd had a full checkup just 6 months prior. With all indicators normal, that box of fortune cookies was the answer. Dr. Who's clinic was located in the deepest alley of the herbal medicine market. The storefront was small, with several strings of dried herbs hanging at the entrance, and the air was filled with the bitter scent of medicinal herbs. When I pushed the door open, an elderly man with gray hair was sitting at a table reading a book, a pair of reading glasses perched on his nose. Dr. Who? I approached and sat down opposite him. The old man looked up, removed his glasses, and glanced at me. Young lady, are you here for a consultation? No, I said, taking out the box of fortune cookies from my bag and placing it on the table. I'd like you to take a look at this for me. Old Doctor Who frowned, opened the plastic bag, and took out one of the cakes. He first held it to his nose and sniffed, then broke off a small piece and tasted it. Then his expression changed. Where did you get this cake? Someone gave it to me. I stared into his eyes. Is there a problem? Old Doctor Who didn't answer. Immediately, he put the cake down, wiped his hands with a wet wipe, and after a long silence, said, Young lady, I don't know where you got this cake, but I advise you, don't eat it. My heart sank, though I already knew the answer. The chill still shot from the soles of my feet all the way up to the top of my head when I heard it confirmed. What's inside? I asked. The exact ingredients can only be confirmed through testing, said Master Who, the old traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, picking up the cake and pointing to the filling. But based on experience, it contains a substance called aconitine. Aconitine itself is a medicinal ingredient. In small amounts, it can relieve pain, but in excess, it's highly toxic. What's more sinister is, when aconitine is mixed with warming tonics like longan and red dates and slowly baked, its toxicity changes. It won't kill immediately, but it will gradually damage the stomach lining and trigger cancer. He paused, then added, and this change is extremely subtle. Ordinary physical exams can't detect it. By the time it's discovered, it's already at an advanced stage. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from hatred. Su Wanqing, you're truly ruthless. She wasn't acting on a whim. She had planned it all carefully, from the selection of ingredients to the making of this box of fortune cakes. Every step was meticulously designed. She wanted our family to be destroyed without realizing it, to die without knowing who had caused it. Dr. Who, could you help me get an official lab report? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. The more detailed, the better. Of course, I can. Dr. Who, the old traditional Chinese medicine practitioner, glanced at me with a hint of concern. But may I ask, whose gift was this cake? If someone is trying to harm you, you'd better report it to the police. I will. I put my pen away and stood up. But not now. Dr. Who, please get the report to me as soon as possible. I need it. When I walked out of the clinic, the sky had already darkened. Standing at the entrance of the herbal market, I watched the last traces of sunset being swallowed by the night, the chill in my heart slowly freezing into ice. Su Wanqing, what you did to my mother, I'll make you pay for it tenfold, but not through the law. The law is too slow, and the evidence might not be enough to seal her fate. I'll use my own methods to drag her from heaven into hell, to make her watch as everything she owns is stripped away, just like she stripped everything from us. That night when I got home, Mom had already prepared dinner. Dad was sitting in the living room watching TV and waved me over when he saw me. Ruoyun, come here. I changed my shoes and sat down beside him. That Zhao Yongqiang you mentioned yesterday, I looked into him today, Dad said, his expression grave. You were right, that guy is definitely shady. Old Zhang, my old friend, was also kept in the dark. He almost got scammed himself. That's good, I sighed in relief. Dad, let's be more careful with these investment opportunities in the future. Dad nodded and was silent for a moment before speaking again. But what I don't get is, how does Su Wanqing know someone like that? She said she's a relative from her mother's side. I replied, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. Maybe cousin was fooled too. Hopefully. Dad frowned. But from now on, we should be cautious about anything she recommends. That girl, I feel like she's changed a lot since getting married. I didn't respond. Dad wasn't a suspicious person by nature, so if he was saying this, it meant he was starting to doubt Su Wanqing. This was good. I wouldn't need to expose Su Wanqing's true nature myself. I just needed to give a little push at the right moment and let her reveal herself. After dinner, I went back to my room and checked my phone to find a message from my cousin-in-law, Zhang Mingyuan, Ruoyun. I thought about what you said today. You're right, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If anyone approaches your dad about investments in the future, keep an eye out. I replied with an okay and closed the chat. Zhang Mingyuan really was a suspicious person. He'd clearly taken my words from this afternoon to heart and was already calculating. This message wasn't so much concern as it was a probe. He wanted to know if I had any other information. I wasn't in a hurry. Let him wait. Let him uncover Su Wanqing's secrets on his own. Let him discover that the child wasn't his. When that time came, I wouldn't need to lift a finger. He'd tear Su Wanqing apart himself. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. Both tasks for the day were accomplished. Zhao Yongqiang's scam was stopped in time, and the secret of the poison pastries was exposed. But this was just the beginning. Su Wanqing's malice toward my family wasn't limited to a box of tainted treats. In my past life, after my family was destroyed, Su Wanqing's life only got better. She gave birth to that child and solidified her position in the Zhang family. Later, as Zhang Mingyuan's business flourished, she became a wealthy socialite, frequenting high-end venues and basking in admiration wherever she went. And what about my family? My mother died in agony from chemotherapy. My father was buried in debt, living a life worse than death, and I ended my short life in that icy lake. No one knew the truth. No one knew that my sweet smiling cousin had 3 lives on her hands. I closed my eyes and silently mapped out my next steps in my mind. First, expose the true identity of the child in Su Wanqing's womb. That's her Achilles heel. The Zhang family values face and bloodline above all else. Once they learn the child isn't a Zhang, Su Wanqing will be kicked out immediately. Second, strip her of everything. Doesn't she care about money? Then I'll make her penniless. Doesn't she care about status? Then I'll ruin her reputation. Doesn't she care about the child? Then I'll make sure she knows this child isn't her talisman, but her death warrant. Third, reveal the lab report on the fortune cakes at the right moment. That will be the most damning evidence. Even if it doesn't land her in jail, it'll be enough to disgrace her in front of everyone. I want her to live, but suffer more than death. That's the ending she deserves. Early the next morning, I received a call from old Doctor Who. The lab report was out. Just as I suspected, the fortune cakes contained aconitine. Over the phone, old Doctor Who warned me emphatically that this substance must never be consumed. Even a small piece, accumulated over time, could be fatal. Doctor Who, could you make a few extra copies of this report, stamped, for my records? Sure, old Doctor Who replied readily. Young lady, if you need a witness, I'm willing to step forward. After hanging up, I saved the digital report on my phone and uploaded a copy to the cloud. This evidence would come in handy sooner or later. The following days appeared uneventful on the surface. Mom went to work as usual, Dad busied himself with his affairs, and I carried on with my routine, eating, sleeping, as if nothing had changed. But I knew this calm was only superficial. Su Wanqing must already be panicking. When she delivered the fortune cakes, I had asked her to eat a piece in front of me, and she refused. Then I mentioned taking the cakes to her mother-in-law's for a taste, and she grew even more flustered. Someone as shrewd as Su Wanqing would surely sense something amiss. She would definitely find another opportunity to test me. Sure enough, within days, Su Wanqing showed up again. It was a weekend. Mom had gone grocery shopping, Dad was playing chess at a friend's place, and I was home alone. The doorbell rang while I was reading in the living room. Opening the door, I found Su Wanqing standing there. She wore a pink maternity dress, carried a fruit basket, and wore a gentle smile. But I could now see exactly what lurked beneath that smile. Cousin, I forgot to bring fruits last time, so I made sure to bring some today. She smiled as she walked in, placing the fruit basket on the coffee table. Are you home alone? Yeah. I poured her a glass of water and sat down across from her. Cousin, you're too kind. You shouldn't have come all this way while pregnant. It's fine, I had nothing else to do anyway. Su Wanqing took a sip of water, her gaze subtly sweeping across the living room. By the way, did you try the box of fortune cookies from last time? How did they taste? Here it comes. I sneered inwardly but put on a regretful expression. Haven't eaten it yet. Mom said it's too hot lately and she's worried about getting heaty, so she plans to save it for later. Su Wanqing's smile stiffened slightly, just for a split second, but I caught it clearly. Oh, I see." She set down the water glass, a barely detectable urgency in her tone. "That pastry won't taste good if it sits too long. You should eat it soon." "Sure, I'll tell Mom later," I smiled. Then abruptly changed the subject. "By the way, cousin. Do you remember that Zhao Yongqiang I mentioned last time?" Su Wanqing's fingers curled slightly. "I remember. What's wrong?" Her voice remained calm, but I could feel her body tensing up. My dad checked later and found that Zhao Yongqiang seemed to have some issues. I looked at her and said slowly, "It seems he had a criminal record before." The air froze for 2 seconds. Su Wanqing blinked, then showed a surprised expression. "Really? I had no idea." "Oh my god, luckily your dad didn't invest the money, otherwise I'd feel so guilty." "Yeah, luckily," I nodded, smiling more gently. "By the way, cousin, how did you meet that Zhao Yongqiang?" I actually don't know him." Su Wanqing looked away, picked up her water glass and took another sip. "My aunt introduced him, said he was a friend. I didn't think much of it, just thought it was a good project, so I mentioned it to my uncle." "Aunt?" I tilted my head. "But Aunt has always lived in the countryside, how could she know someone in investment?" Su Wanqing's lips twitched. "Well, maybe some distant relative, I'm not really sure." She stood up, clearly not wanting to continue the conversation. "Ruoyun, I have something to do. I'll go now." "Leaving already?" I stood up, smiling at her. "Cousin, you're so pregnant now. Don't go out so much. What if you strain the baby? Your husband would be heartbroken." I emphasized the words, husband, with a deliberate tone. Su Wanqing paused for a moment. She didn't turn back, hurried to the door, changed her shoes, and left. The moment the elevator doors closed, I saw through the peephole that her face was deathly pale. It was done. Now she must be panicking. About the fortune cookies, about Zhao Yongqiang, I had mentioned both intentionally or unintentionally. She was also worried about her brother-in-law's attitude. She would feel surrounded, unsure where to begin fixing things, and once a person panics, they make mistakes. Mistakes are digging one's own grave. I returned to the living room and picked up my phone to send a message to Zhang Mingyuan. "Brother-in-law, are you free next Friday? My mom would like to invite your family over for dinner and chat a bit about family matters." Less than half a minute after sending the message, Zhang Mingyuan replied, "Sure, I'll bring Wanqing with me." I put down my phone, a faint smile forming on my lips. "Su Wanqing, what you owe our family, starting next week. I'll collect it back, penny by penny, not just you, also your mother." Hiding behind the scenes, in my past life, I always thought my aunt was a simple, honest rural woman, but now it seems she is the real mastermind. That Zhao Yongqiang was introduced to Su Wanqing by her, and the aconitine in the fortune cookies was most likely provided by her too. Some elderly people in the countryside do know a thing or two about herbal medicine. They mother and daughter, one handling the action, the other the planning, treated our family like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, but they don't know that the lamb has already crawled out from under the butcher's knife, now sharpening its claws, ready to turn the hunter into the hunted. Outside the window, osmanthus petals fell again, covering the ground in a carpet of tiny golden blossoms, dazzling in the sunlight. I stood by the window, watching the street and passers-by below, my heart as calm as a mirror. All the pieces were in place. Su Wanqing was panicking, Zhang Mingyuan was suspicious, Dad's investment was safe, and the secret of the fortune cookies had been exposed. The next step was time to close the net. At next week's dinner, I would make Su Wanqing reveal her true colors in front of her husband, and this was only the first act. The real drama was yet to come. A week later, Zhang Mingyuan arrived with Su Wanqing. That day, Mom prepared a large table of dishes, all of which Su Wanqing had once said she loved. I watched Mom's back as she bustled around the kitchen, a pang of bitterness in my heart. Mom still treated Su Wanqing like her own daughter, unaware that this daughter had prepared a poison for her. At 6 in the evening, the doorbell rang. I went to answer it. Zhang Mingyuan stood at the front, holding 2 bottles of wine, smiling politely. Su Wanqing stood half a step behind him, wearing a beige maternity dress with light makeup, looking gentle and lovely. "Ruoyun, sorry to disturb you again." Zhang Mingyuan handed over the wine. "A friend brought this red wine back from France. Thought Uncle might like to try it." "You're too kind, cousin-in-law." I took the wine, my gaze shifting past him to Su Wanqing. "Cousin, come on in. Mom made your favorite sweet and sour ribs." Su Wanqing smiled, but it seemed forced. From the moment she entered, her eyes kept darting around, as if searching for something. I knew what she was looking for. the box of fortune cookies. Dad came out of the study and shook hands with Zhang Mingyuan. The two men sat in the living room, chatting about business. Mom was busy in the kitchen with the last few dishes. Only Su Wanqing and I remained in the living room. Cousin, how have you been feeling lately? I sat down beside her, my tone casual, as if making small talk. Pretty good. Su Wanqing rested a hand on her stomach, a gesture she'd repeated countless times, as if reminding everyone she was pregnant. Just a bit tired recently. The doctor said I need more rest. You should take care. I nodded. After all, you're not just one person now. The baby comes first. Cousin-in-law treats you so well, accompanying you everywhere. As I said this, I deliberately glanced at Zhang Mingyuan in the living room. Su Wanqing followed my gaze, her expression softening slightly. Yes, Mingyuan really is good to me. That's great. I smiled. Seeing you happy puts our whole family at ease. After all, we're family. Your happiness is ours too. Mom brought out the dishes from the kitchen and called everyone to the table. The atmosphere was initially pleasant. Dad and Zhang Mingyuan discussed the economic situation, while Mom occasionally served Su Wanqing. I sat quietly across from them, eating my meal. The turning point came halfway through dinner. I put down my chopsticks, as if suddenly remembering something, and turned to Su Wanqing. Oh, cousin, about that box of fortune cookies you brought last time. I took a look at them today. Su Wanqing's hand froze midair as she reached for a dish. It lasted less than a second, but I caught it. What about them? Her voice was steady, but her knuckles had turned white around the chopsticks. Nothing serious. I smiled. Just noticed they'd grown some mold, probably spoiled from the humidity. Mom chimed in. Oh, what a shame. Grandma Wanqing made those herself, and we didn't even get to try them. Exactly. I sighed, feigning regret. I was saving them to share with you, cousin, but they're all ruined now. Su Wanqing's lips trembled slightly, but she quickly composed herself, even forcing a smile. It's fine, just throw them away. I'll bring more next time. That's too much trouble. I waved my hand, sounding so sincere I almost believed myself. But cousin, I'm curious, did your mother-in-law use any special recipe for those cookies? The filling had a unique smell. Su Wanqing's face turned pale instantly. And nothing special, she said, taking a big gulp of water to hide her fluster. Just longan, red dates, sesame, and stuff. Homemade style. Oh, I nodded, not pressing further. But Zhang Mingyuan spoke up. What blessing cakes? He put down his chopsticks, glancing at Su Wanqing, then at me. Wanqing, when did you bring cakes over? I didn't know about this. Su Wanqing's smile froze completely. It's the mooncakes made by my mother-in-law. Her voice trembled slightly. I thought there were so many people in Ruoyan's family, so I brought a box over. Your mother-in-law made them. Zhang Mingyuan frowned. Didn't your mother-in-law go back to her hometown last month? When did she make the cakes? The air suddenly grew heavy. Su Wanqing opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her hand was under the table. I couldn't see it, but I guessed her fingers must be trembling. Brother-in-law, maybe I remembered it wrong. I chimed in at the right moment, my tone light as if smoothing things over. Perhaps sister bought it outside and was afraid we'd look down on it, so she said it was made by mom. My words seemed to help Su Wanqing out of a tight spot, but in reality, every syllable pushed her deeper into the pit. Zhang Mingyuan was no fool. Having done business outside for so many years, there was no type of person he hadn't met or words he hadn't heard. On the surface, my words were conciliatory, but their underlying message was clear. Your wife is lying. Su Wanqing hastily added. Why yes, I bought it outside. I just thought the pancakes from that shop were delicious and wanted Ruoyan and the others to try them. I was afraid they'd look down on it, so I said mom made them. Which shop? Zhang Mingyuan pressed. Su Wanqing panicked completely. It's just that one in the mall, she stammered, unable to even name the store. The atmosphere at the dinner table grew awkward. Dad and Mom exchanged a glance, and Mom quickly tried to smooth things over. Oh, it's just a box of pastries, no big deal. Come on, let's eat. The ribs won't taste as good once they're cold. Zhang Mingyuan didn't press further, but his expression had already changed. He took a sip from his glass, his gaze drifting subtly over Su Wanqing's stomach, a flicker of something complicated in his eyes. For the latter half of the meal, Su Wanqing barely touched her food. She sat there, pushing her chopsticks around her bowl, a stiff smile plastered on her face, occasionally responding to Mom's attempts at conversation in a voice as faint as a mosquito's hum. I sat across from her, slowly finishing my bowl of rice. Every bite was chewed deliberately. Su Wanqing, this meal wasn't enjoyable for you, was it? Don't worry. This is just the beginning. Every time you show your face in this house from now on, you'll be one step closer to hell. After dinner, Mom went to the kitchen to wash the dishes, while Dad and Zhang Mingyuan continued drinking tea in the living room. Su Wanqing sat on the sofa, her face still pale, occasionally wiping sweat from her forehead with a handkerchief. I walked out onto the balcony to get some fresh air. Not long after, the glass door behind me opened. Zhang Mingyuan stepped out. Ruoyun, he said, standing beside me and lighting a cigarette. The smoke quickly dispersed in the night breeze. That fortune cookie you mentioned earlier, what exactly happened? I glanced at Su Wanqing in the living room. She was sitting on the sofa, her back to the balcony, her expression unreadable, but her posture was rigid, like a taut string. Brother-in-law, actually it's nothing much. I leaned against the railing, speaking lightly. My cousin sent over a box of cookies, saying they were made by her mother-in-law. Lucky cookies. I thought the taste was a bit off, so I didn't let my parents eat them. Off taste. Zhang Mingyuan turned to look at me. How so? There was this faint, indescribable bitterness, very subtle, but you could smell it if you paid attention, I said, staring into his eyes, each word deliberate. Later, I had an old traditional Chinese medicine doctor check it, he said. The cookies contained a substance called aconitine. Zhang Mingyuan's fingers suddenly tightened, crushing the cigarette but into a distorted shape. Aconitine, what is that? A slow-acting poison. I didn't avoid his gaze. A small amount won't kill immediately, but it damages the gastric mucosa and can lead to stomach cancer over time. Zhang Mingyuan remained silent for a long time. The cigarette tip flickered at the tip of his finger, his face expressionless, but I could see the veins on his temples pulsing. Are you sure? His voice grew hoarse. The lab report is in my room. I can show it to you. I paused, deliberately leaving a hint of uncertainty in my tone. But brother-in-law, don't overthink it. Sister might not have known there was something wrong with the cakes. Maybe they were tampered with before she bought them. Though I said this, my tone intentionally left room for doubt. Zhang Mingyuan was smart. He understood the implication. If he believed Su Wanqing was innocent, then my words would help exonerate her. But if he had already begun to suspect her, my statement would only reinforce his belief that she was lying. Clearly, his reaction was the latter. I'll get to the bottom of this. He crushed the cigarette butt in the ashtray on the balcony and turned to look at Su Wanqing in the living room. If that box of pastries was really tampered with, no matter who did it, I'll make sure they pay the price. As he spoke, his eyes were as cold as a blade. That night, when they left, Su Wanqing's steps were unsteady. Zhang Mingyuan held her arm, but the grip didn't seem like support. It looked more like restraint. I stood at the door, watching the taillights of their car disappear around the corner. Su Wanqing, you must be terrified right now, but this isn't enough. Not nearly enough. Over the next 2 weeks, I accelerated my plans. Detective Chen brought good news. He had uncovered that Su Wanqing's ex-boyfriend was the owner of that club, a man named Zhou Kai. Zhou Kai was somewhat notorious locally, running several entertainment venues. On the surface, he was a legitimate businessman, but behind the scenes, he was involved in plenty of shady dealings. More importantly, Detective Chen had managed to take a few photos of Su Wanqing and Zhou Kai together. Though there were no intimate gestures, the two appeared in the same place far too often for it to be a coincidence. I saved these photos to my phone but didn't rush to send them to Zhang Mingyuan. It wasn't time yet. I needed something more damning, proof that the child wasn't a Zhang. In my past life, I only learned this secret on the verge of death. That night, Su Wanqing called me to the lake, and we argued. She let slip a single sentence. You think your cousin's husband knows nothing? There's plenty he doesn't know. Then she pushed me into the lake. At the time, I didn't grasp what she meant, but in the final moments as water filled my lungs, it suddenly clicked. That child wasn't Zhang Mingyuan's. Looking back now, Su Wanqing's relentless efforts to destroy our family weren't just because we posed a threat to her. The deeper reason was, we knew things she didn't want anyone to know, like her past, her relationship with Zhou Kai, and the child's true parentage. I sat in my room, piecing together all the clues from start to finish. Before Su Wanqing married Zhang Mingyuan, she had been with Zhou Kai for a while. Later, she met Zhang Mingyuan and thought he was a better choice, so she dumped Zhou Kai and married into the Zhang family. However, The timing of her pregnancy coincided with the period before she completely cut ties with Zhou Kai, therefore, the child in her belly might very well not be Zhang Mingyuan's. Once this secret was exposed, Su Wanqing would be completely finished in the Zhang family. Zhang Mingyuan valued his reputation more than his life. He would absolutely not tolerate his wife carrying another man's child. And Su Wanqing clearly knew this too, so she had to eliminate anyone who might know this secret, one by one. For example, our family. In my past life, our whole family treated her with utmost sincerity, yet behind our backs, she was plotting how to make us disappear, not because we had offended her, but because she knew that if the truth ever came out, those of us who knew her past would become her liabilities. She would rather kill the innocent than let anyone slip away. After realizing this, I actually felt calmer. I used to think Su Wanqing hated us, which was why she harmed us, but now I knew it wasn't hate, it was fear. She feared our existence would destroy everything she had worked so hard to obtain. Well, let her be afraid, let her fear until the very end. When she realizes everything she feared will come true. A turning point came a week later. Detective Chen called me and said he had uncovered an important lead. The hospital where Su Wanqing had her prenatal checkups early in her pregnancy happened to be where an old friend of his worked. He said if we could get hold of that prenatal report, we could calculate the child's actual conception date. Mr. Chen, can you help me get that report? There was a pause on the other end of the line. It won't be easy, the hospital's records are strictly managed, but I can try. It'll take some time. That's fine, I'll wait. After hanging up, I received a call from Zhang Mingyuan. Ruoyun, are you free the day after tomorrow? His voice sounded exhausted, as if he hadn't slept well for days. I'd like to talk to you. What about? Can't we discuss it over the phone? It's better to talk in person. He paused. It's about Wanqing. 2 days later, we met at a cafe. When Zhang Mingyuan arrived, I almost didn't recognize him. He had lost a lot of weight, with sunken eyes and stubble on his chin. The expensive watch was gone too, as if all his vitality had been drained. Brother-in-law, what? Ruoyun, he interrupted me, his voice hoarse like sandpaper scraping his throat. That lab report you mentioned last time, can I see it? I handed him the prepared report. Zhang Mingyuan took it and read it from start to finish. His expression shifted from stern to gloomy, finally settling into a chilling calm. You know what? He placed the report on the table. I've been investigating Su Wanqing all this time. She's done many things behind my back. I stayed silent, listening quietly as he continued. She took all our family's savings and gave them to a man named Xiao Yongqiang, saying it was for an investment. 2 million, all gone. He smiled, but it looked more painful than crying. She also frequented a club, whose owner was her ex-boyfriend. You found all this out only halfway. He picked up his coffee cup and took a sip, his hand trembling. There's one more thing I haven't figured out yet, but I have a feeling. He didn't finish, but I understood what he meant. Ruoyun, tell me. He looked up, staring straight into my eyes. Was it really that thing in the fortune cookies your cousin sent? Could it really kill someone? I didn't answer his question but instead asked, brother-in-law, what kind of person do you think my cousin is? Zhang Mingyuan was silent for a long time. I used to think she was gentle, kind, and considerate, he said slowly, but now I don't know anymore. I don't know what the person sleeping beside me every night is really thinking. Then keep investigating, I said, pushing the lab report toward him. Getting to the truth is better than anything else. Zhang Mingyuan took the report and stood up. Ruoyun, thank you, he said, looking down at me from beside the table. Thank goodness you were sharp enough not to let your parents eat those pastries. Otherwise, he didn't finish, but I saw his eyes redden. Brother-in-law, no matter what happens, take care of yourself, I said, watching him. Some people in this world just aren't worth it. He nodded, then turned and left. I sat in the cafe, watching through the floor-to-ceiling window as he got into his car and disappeared into the traffic. Su Wanqing, your good days are almost over. Zhang Mingyuan is not a fool. He has just been deceived for too long. Once he opens his eyes, his revenge will be fiercer and more direct than mine, because he is the one who was betrayed, the one who was played for a fool for 2 years, and all I need to do is stand by and watch as he drags Su Wanqing down from the clouds and shatters her to pieces. That night, Detective Chen called. I've got it. His voice carried a hint of excitement. Su Wanqing's pregnancy dates back to November last year. At that time, her husband Zhang Mingyuan was on a business trip abroad and didn't return for an entire month. My grip on the phone tightened. There's one more thing, Detective Chen continued, the hospital kept a record of an amniocentesis, requested by Su Wanqing herself, claiming it was to screen for some genetic disease, but in reality, she was getting a paternity test. And the result was deleted, but there's still a backup in the hospital system. Detective Chen lowered his voice. The child isn't Zhang Mingyuan's, the biological father's DNA sample wasn't entered into the system, but one thing's certain, it's not her husband's. I closed my eyes, a chill rising from the depths of my heart before slowly dissipating. Mr. Chen, send me a copy of the test results, and keep digging. I need to know who the child's real father is. After hanging up, I sat in the dark for a long time. All the evidence was in place. The poisoned fortune cookies, the stolen money, the child in her belly. These 3 ropes were enough to strangle Su Wanqing, but not yet. I had to choose the perfect moment, to lay everything bare in front of as many people as possible. I wanted her to experience the same despair I felt when I was pushed into the lake in my past life. Everyone watching, yet no one able to save you. The moon outside the window was full again, identical to the one in my past life, but this time, the person standing under its light wasn't me. Su Wanqing, are you ready? It's time to repay what you took from our family. The night I received the paternity report, I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling. One thought circled endlessly in my mind. In my past life, from the moment my mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer to her death, only 4 months had passed. 120 days, a perfectly healthy person, devoured bite by that poison. This time, I'd intercepted the fortune cookies, but I couldn't take the risk. What if Su Wanqing had tampered with something else where I couldn't see? What if my mother's body was already harboring some hidden danger, just waiting to strike? The next morning, I dragged my mom to the hospital. What's wrong with you, dragging me to the hospital so early in the morning? Mom sat in the passenger seat, clearly unwilling. I'm perfectly fine. Why waste money on this? A physical exam, I said, parking the car in the hospital lot and turning to look at her. Mom, your last physical was last year. Let's do a full checkup today, especially your stomach. Mom couldn't resist me and eventually got an appointment. We waited in line, had blood drawn, and underwent a gastroscopy. Torturous all morning. During the gastroscopy, Mom vomited uncontrollably. Hearing the sounds from outside, I felt heartbroken, but I gritted my teeth and didn't go in. This had to be done. In my past life, she was too tolerant, always thinking minor ailments didn't need a doctor. By the time she could no longer bear it, it was already late-stage cancer. At 3 p.m., the test results came out. I held the report, my hands trembling. Mom sat on the nearby chair drinking water, smiling at my expression. You're so nervous. I told you it's nothing. I ignored her, lowering my head and reading line by line. Complete blood count normal, tumor markers within normal range, gastroscopy report. Chronic superficial gastritis. My hand froze. Doctor, what does chronic superficial gastritis mean? I pushed open the clinic door and handed over the report. The attending physician was a woman in her 50s. She adjusted her glasses and carefully examined the endoscopy images. It's not serious, just some inflammation of the gastric mucosa. At your mother's age, 8 out of 10 people have some degree of gastritis. Don't worry too much. Could it develop into stomach cancer? I asked directly. The doctor paused, probably not used to a family member asking so bluntly. She glanced at my mom, then at me, her tone becoming more cautious. Generally, no, but your mother's gastric mucosa is indeed thinner, and there's a small area with atypical hyperplasia. My heart leapt into my throat. Atypical hyperplasia. Those words were also on my mom's pathology report in my past life. Back then, the doctor said it was a precancerous lesion, but it had progressed too late. So what should we do now? My voice trembled slightly. At this stage, timely intervention can reverse it. The doctor wrote something on the medical record. I'll prescribe medication to protect your mother's gastric mucosa. Also, pay attention to your diet. Avoid spicy and stimulating foods, and minimize pickled or smoked foods. Most importantly, regular follow-ups are essential. Have a gastroscopy every 3 to 6 months. I exhaled deeply. There's still time. We can still make it. Mom, sitting beside me, understood only vaguely and thought I was overreacting. The doctor said it's not serious. Why are you so nervous? I ignored her and asked again. Doctor, what if someone long-term ingested trace amounts of aconitine, could it cause damage to the gastric mucosa? The doctor's pen stopped. She looked up, her expression turning serious. Aconitine. She took off her glasses and placed them on the table. Where did you hear about this substance? just asking. I tried to keep my expression natural. I saw it online. The doctor was silent for 2 seconds, then spoke slowly. Aconitine is a highly toxic substance. Even trace amounts can damage the digestive tract mucosa. Long-term accumulation can induce cancer, and this process is very subtle. Ordinary physical exams rarely detect the exact cause. If someone really was exposed to this substance, best to report it to the police immediately. My mom listened in confusion beside us. What are you talking about? What aconitine? Nothing, Mom. I put away the report and pulled her up. Doctor, I was just giving a random example. Let's go get the medicine. As I walked out of the consultation room, I glanced back at the doctor. She was still looking at me, her eyes filled with something indescribable, like worry or wariness. I nodded at her and closed the door. Back home, I laid out the medicine the doctor prescribed one by one on the dining table, explaining everything clearly to Mom. Take this before meals, this after meals, and this 3 times a day. Avoid spicy and irritating foods, and no pickled products either. Mom got annoyed by my nagging and waved her hand, saying, got it, but seeing me arrange the medicine so neatly, she couldn't help but smile. Ruoyun, when did you become so meticulous? I've always been meticulous. I hugged her arm and pressed my face against her shoulder. Mom, you have to live well, live to be 100, silly child. Mom patted my hand and didn't say much more, but I felt her palm linger on the back of my hand for a few extra seconds. At that moment, my eyes stung a little. I still remember vividly how Mom looked lying on the hospital bed in my past life. She was so thin she was just skin and bones, her eye sockets sunken deep, her voice as faint as a candle in the wind. She held my hand and said, Sweetie, I didn't get to see you get married. I can't rest easy, not this time. I won't let anyone take you away from me again. In the days that followed, I kept an eye on Mom to make sure she took her medicine on time while waiting for news from Detective Chen. The paternity test report was already in hand, but the biological father's DNA wasn't in the system, so further confirmation was needed. I guessed it was most likely Zhou Kai, but guesses weren't enough. I needed irrefutable evidence. While waiting for updates, I started investigating another key figure, Aunt Zhao Xiaolan. In my past life, I always thought Auntie was an unremarkable person. She lived in the countryside year-round, wore plain cotton clothes, spoke with a thick rural accent, and seemed awkward and uneasy every time she came to the city. My mom pitied her and would send her things during holidays. When Su Wanqing got married, Mom even gave a big red envelope. Yet this seemingly simple and honest rural woman raised a daughter like Su Wanqing, and now, looking back, Auntie was the real mastermind behind the scenes. She introduced Zhao Yongqiang to Su Wanqing, and the aconitine in the fortune cookies was most likely provided by her too. How would a woman who lived in the countryside year-round get her hands on something like aconitine? I started researching online, scouring every piece of literature I could find about aconitine. Aconitine comes from plants like Aconitum carmicilii and Aconitum cusnezoffi. These herbs are indeed cultivated in some remote mountainous areas. Auntie's hometown happened to be in the southwestern mountains, where the climate and soil were perfect for growing Aconitum plants. But having the raw materials wasn't enough. Extracting aconitine from the herbs required knowledge and techniques beyond the average person's ability. I began recalling every detail from my past life. What did Auntie do before? I vaguely remember Mom mentioning once that Auntie worked at a local health center when she was young. Back then, I didn't think much of it, assuming a health center was just for giving shots and prescribing basic medicine, nothing special. But now it's suddenly hit me. If Auntie worked at a health center, she likely had exposure to traditional Chinese herbs. In the Chinese medicine departments of rural health centers, aconitum herbs are commonly used. She not only knew about the toxicity of aconitine but also how to control the dosage. Once this idea took root, it grew like wildfire. I sent a message to Detective Chen, investigate Su Wanqing's mother. She previously worked at which township health center, in what position, and the reason for leaving. The next day at noon, Detective Chen replied, found it quite interesting. Her mother is named Zhao Xiaolan, 54 years old this year. From 1989 to 1997, she worked at the Panlong Township Health Center in Yunshan County, in the position of pharmacy management. In 1997, she was fired due to a medical accident. She miscalculated the dosage of a medicinal herb, causing a patient to suffer poisoning and nearly die. My hands began to tremble. 1997. How old was Su Wanqing then? She hadn't even been born yet, so my aunt wasn't an ordinary person. She had a criminal record. she almost killed someone by miscalculating a dosage and was kicked out of the health center, but she didn't learn from it. Instead, she used that knowledge for something even more sinister, and then, my fingers were icy as I typed. After being fired, she returned to the village and made a living by farming. Later, she married Su Wanqing's father, a simple, honest farmer. Detective Chen paused, then sent another message. There's one more thing you might find interesting. Zhao Xiulan's family used to be in the medicinal herb business, specializing in the cultivation and purchase of aconite. Though they're no longer in business now, there are reportedly still wild aconite plants on the mountains near their hometown. When I read this message, my entire body froze. Everything fell into place. Zhao Xiulan had knowledge of medicinal herbs, access to aconitine, and experience in dosage preparation. Her only daughter, Su Wanqing, married into the Zhang family, but the child in her womb wasn't a Zhang. To secure her daughter's position and eliminate all potential threats, the mother and daughter teamed up to carry out this vicious purge, and my family, we were simply targeted for elimination because we were too close to Su Wanqing and knew too much. In my past life, my mother treated Su Wanqing like her own niece, while Su Wanqing secretly handed her poison. Every time Zhao Xiulan visited our home, she smiled with feigned honesty, mouthing words of gratitude while her eyes roamed over my mother, as if assessing the state of prey. And my father, that decent, hard-working middle-aged man, was swindled out of half his life's savings by them through a fake investment project. I sat in my room, feeling a chill crawl from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. Not fear, but a cold, seething fury. I picked up my phone and called Detective Chen. Mr. Chen, I need you to help me investigate one last thing. Whether Zhao Xiulan has visited the city in recent years and if she has met with Su Wanqing. Ideally, find photos or surveillance footage of them together. No problem, Detective Chen replied readily, but gathering this will take time. You'll need to be patient. I'll wait. After hanging up, I walked to the window and looked out at the overcast sky. Su Wanqing, Zhao Xiulan, you two are quite the mother-daughter team. One plays the young mistress in the city, the other the mastermind in the countryside. You thought your scheme was flawless, that no one would uncover your secret, but justice has long arms. In my past life, you succeeded because I was unprepared. This time, you're facing someone who crawled back from hell. Over the next few days, I began deliberately getting closer to Zhao Xiulan. Coincidentally, Mom mentioned that Auntie hadn't been feeling well lately and wanted to visit her. I immediately chimed in. Sure, Mom, I'll go with you. I haven't seen Auntie in a while. I really miss her. Mom seemed surprised, probably not expecting me to be so eager, but she didn't think much of it. The next day, she drove us to the countryside. Zhao Xiulan lived in a small village about 60 kilometers from the city. The village wasn't large, with just a few dozen households, their houses scattered neatly along the mountainside. Zhao Xiulan's home was a two-story building, relatively decent by village standards. When we arrived, she was sitting in the yard, basking in the sun. She wore a floral-patterned blouse, her hair casually pinned back, looking no different from any ordinary rural woman. Oh my, what brings you here? Zhao Xiulan stood up, her face breaking into a wide smile as she clung to my mom's hand. Coming all this way? Come in, sit down. We heard you weren't feeling well, so we came to check on you, Mom said, placing the fruits and nutritional supplements she'd brought on the table. What's wrong? Where does it hurt? Just old aches and pains. My joints. Zhao Xiulan sighed as she poured water. It gets bad when the weather changes. Getting old is no fun. I stood behind Mom, quietly surveying the room. The living room was small, furnished with outdated pieces. A family portrait hung on the wall. In it, Su Wanqing, dressed in a wedding gown, held Zhang Mingyuan's arm, her face radiant with happiness. Zhao Xiulan stood beside them, wearing an ill-fitting qipao, her expression a mix of awkwardness and pride. My gaze was drawn to an old wooden cabinet in the corner. Its door was slightly ajar, stuffed with all sorts of clutter. Amid the mess, I spotted a medicine jar, nothing unusual for a rural household, but this one had a distinctive design. It was an old-fashioned earthenware jar, its rim stained with a dark red residue. My heart raced. Auntie, do you still brew herbal medicine here? I feigned curiosity and walked over to the cabinet. Zhao Xiulan's movements faltered, just briefly, almost imperceptibly, but her hand pouring the water did pause for a split second. She smiled and walked over, closing the cabinet door. Just an old thing, hasn't been used in years. After your cousin got married, my health improved. No need for medicine anymore. Oh, I nodded, dropping the subject, but I'd already seen the dark red residue on the jar's rim. It wasn't the usual traces of herbal dregs. I'd seen similar jars at Old Who's traditional medicine clinic. He told me that residue was a telltale sign of brewing aconite. Aconitine reacts with earthenware during boiling, leaving behind a dark red stain that can't be washed off, a well-known marker among veteran herbalists. The evidence was right in front of me, but I didn't say anything. It wasn't the right time yet. What I needed wasn't just a medicine jar but a complete chain of evidence: DNA tests, drug analysis, Xiao Yongqiang's testimony, Xiao Xilan's background. Everything had to connect to nail the mother-daughter pair for good. As we were leaving, Xiao Xilan walked us to the village entrance. Ruoyun has grown up, becoming more and more beautiful, she said, taking my hand and examining me from head to toe. A kind smile on her face. Do you have a boyfriend yet? Auntie can introduce you to someone. It's still early, Auntie, I replied with a smile, squeezing her hand and feeling the warmth and rough lines of her palm. Was it these hands that had prepared the aconitine in those fortune cookies, these hands that, while smiling and handing us the cookies, had slowly seeped the poison in? Auntie, I suddenly spoke up. I heard you used to work at the health center. Xiao Xilan's smile didn't change, but her eyes did. Such a subtle shift, like a dark current passing over a calm lake, fleeting and gone in an instant. That was decades ago, she said, releasing my hand, her tone as light as if she were talking about someone else's story. Back then, our family was poor. I studied at a nursing school for a few years and then started working. After I got married, I stopped. You must know a lot about medicine, then. I tilted my head, looking at her with innocent eyes. I have a classmate studying traditional Chinese medicine. He says aconite can treat illness but is also toxic. Auntie, have you heard of that? The air fell silent for a moment. Xiao Xilan glanced at me, just a brief look, so short that even Mom, standing nearby, didn't notice, but I saw it, the coldness that flashed through her eyes. Aconite, well, it's medicine, and it's poison, she said with a smile, her tone as calm as if discussing the weather. Used properly, it's medicine. Used improperly, it's poison. Chinese medicine emphasizes using poison to fight poison, but it's not something you use casually. Auntie, you're so knowledgeable, you know everything. I smiled even more sweetly. On the way back, Mom sighed in the car. Your auntie hasn't had an easy life, raising your cousin all by herself. Now that your cousin is married, well, she's finally made it through. Yes, I leaned back in the seat, gazing at the fields rushing past the window. Made it through, too bad. What you've made it through isn't heaven, but hell. The day after we got home, Zhang Mingyuan called. His voice was completely different from the last time we met, where before it had been weary and despondent. Now it was cold and sharp, like a freshly sharpened knife. Ruoyun, are you free to come out? I need to talk to you. We met at our old place. Zhang Mingyuan was even thinner than the last time I saw him, but he had made himself presentable. His hair was freshly cut, his stubble cleanly shaved, and he wore a crisply ironed shirt. He sat across from me, his gaze so sharp it was almost unbearable to meet. I've figured it all out, he said, placing a manila envelope on the table and sliding it toward me. The child in Su Wanqing's belly isn't mine. I took the envelope but didn't open it. I already knew what was inside. Who's the father? Zhou Kai? Zhang Mingyuan's facial muscles twitched as he uttered the name. Her ex-boyfriend. During the 2 months I was away on business, she was with him the whole time. After I returned, she told me she was pregnant. He paused, then suddenly laughed, a laugh devoid of anger, only a chilling calm. You know what? I was already disgusted enough that she got pregnant with someone else's child, but she did something even worse. He picked up the water glass on the table, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. She secretly did a paternity test, knew the child wasn't mine. But she didn't tell me. She planned to have this child and make me, Zhang Mingyuan, raise another man's son for the rest of my life. What did she want? What did she want? Zhang Mingyuan slammed the glass back onto the table. My money, the Zhang family's reputation, her position as the young mistress. Zhou Kai has money, but his wealth is dirty, something he can't show off. Su Wanqing wanted a respectable identity, and I gave her that. He stopped, took a deep breath, and lowered his voice further. Ruoyun, do you know what else she did to keep this secret? My heart tightened. She took our family's savings to launder Zhou Kai's money, calling it an investment, when it was really just moving assets. If that was all, fine, but she even went to your father, tried to drag him into this, to get him to cover the hole she dug in our finances. I froze for a moment. So this was the truth behind Zhao Yongqiang's scam. Su Wanqing hadn't just wanted to harm our family, she was trying to use our money to fill the pit she had dug in the Zhang family's finances, and when she proposed this plan, she had worn a sweet smile, saying, "Uncle, this project is really good, I'm only telling you because we're family, cousin-in-law, have you verified all this?" "I have." Zhang Mingyuan pulled another envelope from his bag, thicker than the last. "This has all the evidence, bank transfers, call logs, surveillance screenshots from the club, and her chat logs with Zhou Kai, Ruoyun. I spent 2 months figuring out exactly what kind of person your cousin is. What are you going to do?" Zhang Mingyuan was silent for a long time. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across his face. He sat there like a volcano about to erupt, calm on the surface, but boiling with fury beneath. "I won't divorce her," he finally said, his voice low and steady. "Divorce? That would be too easy for her. I'm going to make her spit out every single thing she's swallowed. She'll have to fill the hole left by Zhao Yongqiang herself. She loves investing, doesn't she? Then I'll let her invest to her heart's content." A cold smile curled at the corner of his lips. "I have a shell company under my name, originally used for tax planning. Now it's perfect for this. I'll have someone introduce Su Wanqing to a new project, one more tempting, with higher returns than Zhao Yongqiang's. Then I'll make her invest every penny Zhou Kai gave her." I watched him quietly, a strange feeling welling up inside me. In my previous life, Zhang Mingyuan had been a bystander to our family's ruin. When everything fell apart, he hadn't even offered a word of comfort. Back then, I thought he was cold. Now I know. He was just kept in the dark. Once he opens his eyes, his methods are far more ruthless than anyone else's. "Ruoyun," Zhang Mingyuan suddenly called my name. "You knew from the beginning, didn't you?" I didn't answer. "That time you invited me to dinner, you said, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and told me to keep my eyes open." He looked at me, his gaze searching, mixed with something indescribable. "You knew back then, but you said nothing." "I did." I lifted my coffee cup and took a sip. "I just said it more subtly." Zhang Mingyuan paused, then suddenly laughed, short, just a couple of chuckles, but the laughter carried real emotion, not anger, but a kind of absurd sorrow. "Your family is lucky to have you." He stood up, tucking the envelope into his bag. "Ruoyun, what I'm about to do might involve you. If your cousin comes to you for help, what will you do?" "My cousin hurt my family." I stood and met his eyes. "Cousin-in-law, go ahead, I won't stop you, and I won't help her." Zhang Mingyuan nodded, then turned and walked away. After a few steps, he stopped and looked back at me. "Once I'm done here, Zhao Xilan will need an explanation too." I was stunned. "You found out everything?" Zhao Xilan used to work at the health center. She was fired after a medical accident. The victim was a distant relative of a friend of mine. His eyes turned cold. "Do you know what they did to me? They sent the same kind of fortune cake to my mother." My pupils contracted sharply. "Your mother? She was diagnosed with early-stage stomach cancer last year. They removed a third of her stomach, and she's still recovering." Zhang Mingyuan's voice was so calm it was terrifying. "I always thought she was just old and frail, but when I saw the lab report you gave me, I remembered something. When Su Wanqing first married into our family, she also sent my mother a box of wedding cakes, saying they were made by her mother herself, and eating them would bring good luck. Did your mom take it?" "She did. My dad took it too." Zhang Mingyuan's hands clenched into fists, his knuckles cracking. "The doctor said if we discovered it any later, not even the gods could have saved them." I stood rooted to the spot, my whole body turning cold. It turned out our family wasn't the only victim. Su Wanqing and her daughter had reached further and more viciously than I'd ever imagined. They didn't just want to destroy us, they hadn't spared Zhang Mingyuan's parents either. What they wanted was the entire Zhang family fortune. "Ruoyun," Zhang Mingyuan's voice pulled me back from my shock. "Please tell uncle and aunt. Tell them to take good care of their health. Once I've dealt with things here, I'll bring all the evidence and file a report." "You're going to report it?" "Of course I am." He smiled, and in that smile there was a sharp, dangerous glint. "But before that, I'm going to make her kneel in the Zhang family home and beg my mother for forgiveness." After Zhang Mingyuan left, I sat alone in the coffee shop for a long time. The sky outside had darkened, and streetlights flickered on one by one. I held the coffee cup, now cold, my mind swirling with countless emotions. The truth I had Never known in my previous life finally surfaced. Su Wanqing and her daughter had never seen us as family. Instead, in their eyes, we were obstacles standing in the way of their interests, people who could be eliminated. They had used the most vicious methods to slowly erode our lives, all while wearing gentle smiles on their faces. I took out my phone and dialed Dr. Hu, the old traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. Dr. Hu, this is Ruoyun. I need your help. If you're available, could you please compile all the medical information you know about chronic aconitine poisoning? The more detailed, the better. There was a brief silence on the other end. Young lady, what exactly do you plan to do? Dr. Hu's voice carried a hint of concern. I want the person who used this poison to be punished as they deserve, I said calmly, not through personal revenge, through legal means, but before that, I need enough professional knowledge to support my evidence chain. Dr. Hu was silent for a moment, then said, all right, I'll prepare it for you, come pick it up in 3 days. After hanging up the phone, I paid the bill and left the cafe. The night breeze was chilly, sharp against my face. I tightened my coat and walked slowly along the street. My phone vibrated. A message from Detective Chen. Zhao Xilan is coming to the city this Saturday to meet Su Wanqing. I'll send you the location. I glanced at it. The address was a private club Su Wanqing frequented, rumored to have soundproof rooms perfect for discussing matters best kept private. I put my phone away and quickened my pace. On Saturday, I'd be waiting near that club, not to eavesdrop, but to confirm what they, mother and daughter, were discussing, confirm their next move, confirm whether the evidence I had was complete enough. Then it would be time to close the net. Su Wanqing, Zhao Xilan, your days of ease are numbered. I woke up very early on Saturday. It wasn't fully light yet, and the street outside was shrouded in a thin layer of morning mist, with the streetlights casting soft, warm yellow glows that blurred into indistinct circles. I sat on the edge of the bed, laying out one by one all the things I had collected over the past period, the medical data on aconitine compiled by Master Hu, a thick stack of papers, each page stamped with the official seal of the Provincial Hospital of Traditional Chinese Medicine, the lab report on the fortune cookies, clearly stating, aconitine content and concentration analysis, a copy of Zhao Xilan's employment file from the Panlong Town Health Center, along with the investigation report on her medical malpractice incident, a transcript of Zhao Yongqiang's statement during police interrogation, clearly stating that Su Wanqing had proactively contacted him, asking him to defraud my father's savings under the guise of investment, bank transfer records, surveillance screenshots from the private club, and backup chat logs between Su Wanqing and Zhou Kai provided by Zhang Mingyuan, the original copy of the paternity test report. The conclusion line burned into my eyes like a branding iron, and finally, a new photo sent by Detective Chen the day before, Su Wanqing and Zhao Xilan meeting in a private room at the club, sitting together, their expressions tense as they discussed something. I carefully placed each item into an envelope, sealed it, and set it on the table. The chain of evidence was complete. From motive to method, from the process of execution to the consequences, every link could be connected, and each step had corresponding proof. I glanced at my phone. Zhang Mingyuan had sent a message last night, tomorrow noon, at my old family home, the old man's 70th birthday, everyone who should come will be there. I replied with 2 words, received. Zhang Mingyuan's reference to the old house was the family's old courtyard located on the hillside in the eastern part of the city. The patriarch of the Zhang family was exactly 70 this year, and according to their family tradition, the birthday banquet had to be held at the old house, with all relatives and friends required to attend. Zhang Mingyuan had chosen this day to close the net. His intention was clear. He would expose Su Wanqing for who she truly was in front of the Zhang family's ancestors and all their relatives and friends. In my previous life, my memory of the Zhang family's old house was hazy. I only remembered visiting it once. The courtyard was large, with gray bricks and tiled roofs, and there was an old locust tree in the yard, said to be over 200 years old. When Su Wanqing first married into the Zhang family, she loved taking photos under that locust tree, posting several times on her social media, with captions like, peaceful, and, happiness passed down, beautiful phrases like that. She was indeed very skilled at crafting her public image. Not just her, both mother and daughter were experts in this field. Zhao Xilan always presented herself in public as a simple, honest rural woman, speaking slowly and smiling at everyone. Su Wanqing, on the other hand, portrayed herself as a gentle and virtuous young mistress, her every gesture exuding grace and composure, yet these two seemingly harmless women used the most sinister methods to push one relative after another into hell. My mother's stomach, Zhang Mingyuan's mother's stomach, both were gradually destroyed by them with those lucky cakes. My father's savings were nearly all swindled away by them through fake investment projects. As for me, my previous life's icy lake water still lingers in my memory, and every time I close my eyes, I can still feel that suffocating sensation. Today I wore a simple black dress with my hair tied into a low ponytail. Standing in front of the mirror, I examined myself. My eyes were completely different from my past life. Back then, I was still that naive and innocent girl who regarded my cousin as the closest sister. Now, there's no trace of naivety in my eyes, only a calmness tempered by death. Ruoyun, are you ready yet? Mom called from the living room. Your cousin's father-in-law's big birthday banquet. We can't be late. Coming. I grabbed the file folder from the table and stuffed it into my bag. Mom looked puzzled when she saw me carrying the bag. Why such a big bag for a birthday banquet? Just brought some things, I replied with a faint smile, offering no further explanation. On the way to the old house, Mom was still sighing. After your cousin married into the Zhang family, her life has really improved. Though her husband is busy, he's never said a word against her. Now she's pregnant again. She's truly established herself in the Zhang family. Yeah, I said, staring out the window at the passing street scenes. Established herself. Too bad she's standing on the edge of a cliff, unaware of it herself. The Zhang family's old residence was bustling today. 2 large red lanterns hung at the entrance of the courtyard. Alongside a big character for longevity, round tables filled the yard, roughly 20 or so by a quick count. The Zhang's relatives and friends packed the place, with the old locust tree's branches and leaves shading most of the courtyard. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, scattering golden fragments across the ground. Su Wanqing stood beside the elderly patriarch, wearing a loose red maternity dress. Her hair elegantly pinned up and adorned with a pair of pearl earrings, she looked radiant. She held the old man's arm, greeting each guest who came to offer birthday wishes with a warm smile. Carrying herself like the lady of the house, Zhang Mingyuan stood on the steps not far away, holding a cup of tea, his gaze coolly sweeping over her back. His expression was as calm as stagnant water, but the emotions hidden in those eyes, only I could understand. Ruoyun, over here. Su Wanqing saw me and waved enthusiastically. Come meet my dad, he's been talking about you for ages. Old Mr. Zhang, the patriarch of the family, was a sprightly elderly man with white hair but a straight back. He smiled warmly and shook my hand. You're Wanqing's cousin, right? She's often mentioned you. She said you two have always been close since childhood. Yes, my cousin has always been very kind to me. I smiled and glanced at Su Wanqing, so kind that I don't even know how to repay her. Su Wanqing's smile was flawless, and she even reached out to gently touch my hair. Silly girl. Don't talk about repaying or not repaying, after all. We're family. The words, family, coming from her mouth made my stomach churn with nausea, but I held it in. This wasn't the right time yet. The birthday banquet officially began at noon. Dishes were served one after another on the round table, and amidst clinking glasses and laughter, the atmosphere was joyous. Su Wanqing sat at the main table, beside Zhang Mingyuan and the old man, occasionally standing up to toast the elders. Her manners impeccable. Midway through the meal, the old man stood up to speak. He held a wine glass, his face flushed with happiness, his voice strong and clear. Thank you all, dear relatives and friends, for coming to celebrate my birthday. Today is not only my birthday, but also a joyful announcement. My daughter-in-law Wanqing is carrying my great-grandchild, who will be born in a few months. Double happiness. The courtyard erupted in enthusiastic applause. Su Wanqing stood up, slightly bowing, her smile as gentle as a painting come to life at that moment. Zhang Mingyuan stood up. He held a glass of wine and walked to the old man's side, his voice quiet, but the entire courtyard fell silent. Dad, before you announce the good news, I have a few words I'd like to say. The old man smiled and looked at him. Just say it. Zhang Mingyuan turned around, his gaze slowly sweeping across the guests in the courtyard, finally landing on Su Wanqing. Su Wanqing. He didn't call her by her nickname, but used her full name. Do you have anything you'd like to clarify in front of everyone? Me, my father, and all the relatives and friends here. Su Wanqing's smile froze. For a moment, the courtyard was so quiet that only the rustling of the locust tree leaves could be heard. Mingyuan, you. Su Wanqing's voice trembled slightly. What are you talking about? What am I talking about? Zhang Mingyuan smiled, his expression as cold as ice in December. Then let me ask you another way. What's the surname of the child you're carrying? The words exploded. Like a bomb at the head table, the old man's wine glass slipped from his hand with a clatter, spilling alcohol all over the table. Zhang Mingyuan's mother turned deathly pale in an instant, gripping the armrest of her chair to steady herself. The surrounding guests exchanged uneasy glances, and hushed whispers surged like a rising tide. Su Wanqing's face drained of all color. She stood there, lips trembling, and after a long pause, barely managed to force out a sentence. Mingyuan, you're drunk. What nonsense are you saying? Nonsense. Zhang Mingyuan pulled a paternity test report from his pocket and slammed it onto the table. I had this retrieved from the hospital. You got pregnant last November. I was on a business trip abroad at the time. You took the paternity test. What was the conclusion? You know the answer better than anyone. Su Wanqing's body swayed slightly, her hand gripping the edge of the table so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Mingyuan, this is fake. Her voice began to tremble. Someone is trying to frame me. To frame you? Frame me? Zhang Mingyuan pulled out another stack of documents from his pocket. Then what about these? Your chat records with Zhou Kai, the surveillance screenshots from the club, and the records showing you transferring the money he gave you into Zhao Yongqiang's account. Su Wanqing, do you still want to say I'm wronging you? The courtyard erupted in chaos. Relatives whispered among themselves, some in shock, some in anger, and others with malicious glee. The old man sat on his chair, his hands trembling, his face flushed red, unable to utter a single word. Zhang Mingyuan's mother covered her face, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. Su Wanqing stood amidst the scattered gazes, her lips quivering, her eyes darting nervously around like a mouse cornered in a trap. I glanced at Zhao Xiulan sitting at the table in the corner. She was here again today, wearing a dark coat, seated in an inconspicuous spot. Her face looked even worse than Su Wanqing's, her fingers tightly clutching the tablecloth, her knuckles turning white. It was time. I stood up and walked through the crowd to the main table. Uncle Zhang, I said, looking at the elderly man. My voice was quiet but loud enough for those nearby to hear. I might know a bit more about my cousin's situation than even her husband does. The old man turned his gaze to me, his cloudy eyes bloodshot. I opened my bag and pulled out a file folder. I have some things here I'd like the elders to review. I placed the lab report for the pastries on the table first. A few months ago, my cousin sent my family a box of wedding pastries, claiming her mother-in-law made them. The taste seemed off, so I had them tested. The report shows the pastries contained aconitine, a slow-acting poison. Long-term, low-dose ingestion can damage the stomach lining and induce gastric cancer. A collective gasp rippled through the courtyard. If it were just our family who received them, that would be one thing, I continued, pulling out the medical summary of Zhang Mingyuan's mother, who was diagnosed with early-stage gastric cancer last year. When my cousin first married into the Zhang family, she also sent Aunt Zhang the same pastries. Aunt Zhang, did you eat the wedding pastries my cousin sent you? Zhang Mingyuan's mother jerked her head up, her eyes wide. I did. I ate a whole box. That lines up, I said, turning to Su Wanqing. Her face had completely drained of color. Cousin, can you explain, why were the pastries you sent laced with poison? Su Wanqing opened her mouth, but no words came out. One more thing, I said, pulling Zhao Xiulan's employment records from the Panlong Town Health Center out of the folder. Auntie, you used to work in the pharmacy at Panlong Town Health Center. In 1997, you nearly killed a patient by mixing up the dosage of a medicinal herb. You know your way around herbs, don't you? Things like aconitine. How to extract it, how to measure the dosage, how to mix it into food. You understand that better than anyone. Zhao Xiulan shot to her feet, her chair clattering to the ground with a sharp crash. Her finger trembled as she pointed at me, her lips quivering, but no words escaped. Anne, your maiden family used to grow aconite. There are still wild aconite plants on the mountain near your hometown. I placed the final document on the table. I've pieced together the whole story, evidence, exhibits, witnesses. Nothing's missing. The courtyard full of guests had fallen completely silent. Everyone stared at Su Wanqing and Zhao Xiulan, their expressions a mix of shock, disgust, and fear. Su Wanqing stood at the center of the crowd, the last shred of composure crumbling from her eyes. It wasn't me. She began shaking her head, the motion growing more frantic, her hair coming loose, one pearl earring falling to the ground. It wasn't my idea, it was my mother. She said this would solve all our problems, the moment the words left her mouth. Zhao Xiulan's face twisted. Wanqing, shut your mouth. Zhao Xiaolan shrieked, lunging forward, only to be held back by relatives nearby. She said, if we made everyone who knew too much disappear, no one could threaten my position. Su Wanqing's voice grew shriller, more fragmented. She said she would prepare the poison, and I would deliver it. As long as we took it slow, no one would notice. The old man slammed his hand hard on the table, making the dishes jump. Enough. The entire courtyard fell silent. The old man stood up, swaying slightly, and Zhang Mingyuan hurried to support him. The old man's face turned from red to livid, his lips trembling for a long time before he managed to speak clearly. Call the police, Mingyuan. Call the police now. Zhang Mingyuan took out his phone and dialed 3 numbers. Su Wanqing, witnessing this scene, collapsed to the ground as if all her bones had been drained. Her skirt spread out on the floor, the red hem resembling a pool of melted blood. She began to cry, her sobs sharp and broken, echoing through the quiet old courtyard. Mingyuan, Mingyuan, you can't do this. She crawled over and clung to Zhang Mingyuan's legs, her makeup smeared. I'm the child's mother. Think about the child. Zhang Mingyuan looked down at her, his eyes utterly expressionless. The child, his voice was as light as a feather falling on snow. That's you and Zhou Kai's child. You've kept this from me for so long. Weren't you just trying to make me the fool? Now you're using the child to beg me. Don't you find that ridiculous? Su Wanqing's hand froze mid-air, then slowly dropped. Zhao Xiaolan, standing nearby, was held back by 2 relatives. Her expression shifted from anger to despair. She looked at me, her eyes filled with hatred and an indescribable fear. You, her voice was hoarse and low. When did you know? I looked at her, the mastermind behind my mother's death in the past life. The woman who destroyed our family with the most vicious methods, and a strange calm suddenly filled my heart. From the beginning, I said, from the moment your daughter handed me that box of fortune cakes. Zhao Xiaolan's eyes widened. You, how could you? Her voice began to tremble. Because I've already died once, I said, looking at her, each word deliberate. I remember every single thing you and your daughter did in the past life. The stomach cancer that took my mother, my father's deception, and the night I was pushed into the lake and drowned. Zhao Xiaolan's face twisted completely. She broke free from the relatives holding her and lunged toward me, emitting sounds that weren't human. But Zhang Mingyuan stepped in front of me and pushed her back. Enough. His voice was as cold as a blade. Save your energy. There'll be plenty of time for you to talk at the police station. Zhao Xiaolan collapsed to the ground, sitting beside Su Wanqing, the mother and daughter, one slumped, the other kneeling, their faces soaked with tears and fear. But in their eyes, there was no trace of remorse. I could see they were only regretting that they had been discovered, not regretting what they had done, but that no longer mattered. The police arrived quickly. 3 patrol cars parked at the entrance of the old house, and uniformed officers walked through the courtyard filled with round tables, their expressions stern. The lead officer briefly questioned Zhang Mingyuan, glanced at the materials I provided, then waved to the officers behind him. Su Wanqing and Zhao Xiaolan, suspected of intentional homicide and fraud, please come with us. As Su Wanqing was escorted by 2 female officers, she suddenly turned to look at me. Her eyes were complex, filled with hatred, fear, disbelief, and something else I couldn't decipher. Ruoyan, her voice was so hoarse it was almost inaudible. Why did you do this? I looked at her and didn't answer, because the answer was too long. So long it would take an entire world to contain it. If you had experienced everything I had, being pushed into the lake by the person you trusted most, icy water flooding your lungs, sinking slowly under the moonlight, you wouldn't ask that question. But I said nothing. I just stood there, watching her and Zhao Xiaolan being led into the police car, the door slamming shut, the engine starting, and then disappearing down the mountain road beyond the old house's gate. After the sound of the police cars faded, the courtyard of the old house fell into dead silence. No one spoke, no one touched their chopsticks. The banquet tables were still steaming with food, but everyone had lost their appetite. The old man sat in his chair, his hand pressed to his forehead, his shoulders trembling slightly. Zhang Mingyuan's mother leaned against her son, silently crying. Zhang Mingyuan walked over to the old man, knelt down, and took his father's hand. Dad, I'm sorry. His voice was rough. Today was your 70th birthday, and I ruined it. The old man was silent for a long time, then he raised his hand and placed it on Zhang Mingyuan's head, patting it gently. It's not your fault. The old man's voice was aged and weary, but his tone was firm. You did the right thing. The Zhang family's door cannot be stepped on by such a poisonous woman. He turned to look at me. Girl, he called out, tears glistening in his eyes. along with an indescribable gratitude. You saved our whole family. Uncle Zhang won't forget you. I shook my head. I didn't do it for the Zhang family. I did it for my own. The old man nodded and said nothing more, but in that moment, what I saw in his eyes wasn't anger toward Su Wanqing, it was recognition for a stranger, a girl. That afternoon, when I returned home, Mom still didn't know what had happened. She had been brought back by my older cousin midway through the banquet, so they hadn't seen the aftermath. When I walked into the living room, Mom was sitting on the sofa watching TV, a plate of cut fruit on the coffee table. You're back. She turned to look at me. How was the banquet? Was it lively? Very lively. I sat down beside her and popped a piece of apple into my mouth. Exceptionally lively. How's your cousin? She's so heavily pregnant, she shouldn't overexert herself. My hand paused. Mom, I set the apple down. There's something I need to tell you. Seeing my expression, Mom straightened up. What is it? I told her everything that had happened at the Zhang family that day, from the poisoned fortune cakes to Su Wanqing's schemes, Zhao Xiulan's background, and the final outcome of the mother and daughter being taken away in a police car. After hearing this, Mom sat motionless on the sofa. Her face changed from rosy to pale, then from pale to livid. The hand resting on her knee began to tremble, shaking more and more violently. Ruoyun, her voice was hoarse. What you said, is it all true? Yes. I took her hand. Mom, I didn't throw away that box of fortune cakes. I had them tested. There was poison in them. Su Wanqing has been trying to harm our whole family for days. Maybe even longer. Mom's tears suddenly welled up. She wasn't the kind of person who would cry out loud. She just sat there, tears falling one by one, her lips quivering, unable to make a sound. How could she? After a long time, she finally managed to say a complete sentence. I treated her like my own niece. You've been closest to her since you were little. How could she? I hugged her. Mom's body trembled violently in my arms. Her hand clutched my sleeve so tightly, with astonishing strength. I felt her tears soaking into the fabric on my shoulder, warm, burning with the heat of survival after a near-death experience. It's okay, Mom. I patted her back, my voice soft. It'll be fine from now on. Nothing bad will happen anymore. Dad came out of the study, standing at the living room doorway, watching us mother and daughter. He didn't say anything, but I saw his eyes were red. He walked over to the sofa, sat down, and wrapped his arms around both of us. The three of us held each other tightly, silent for a long, long time. Outside the window, the osmanthus flowers were still blooming. The tiny, scattered golden petals were blown by the wind, falling onto the windowsill, forming a thick layer. Sunlight shone on them, sparkling like scattered stars across the ground. At that moment, an unprecedented sense of security welled up inside me. The fragmented images from my past life, the chemotherapy prescription, my father's white hair, the broken moonlight on the lake, finally began to fade in color. They wouldn't disappear. I knew those scars would remain etched in my heart, becoming part of my body, but I was no longer afraid of them, because I had won, not by sending Su Wanqing to prison. That was just a result. What I truly won was stopping her before anything happened. Mom was still alive and healthy. Dad hadn't gone bankrupt. And I hadn't sunk into the lake on that cold night. That was enough. That evening, I stood on the balcony, gazing at the city lights in the distance. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Zhang Mingyuan. The police found a large quantity of aconite herbs and pre-mixed powders in Zhao Xiulan's countryside house, along with a handwritten recipe. Su Wanqing and Zhao Xiulan have been formally arrested. Charges include attempted murder, fraud, and evidence forgery. Zhou Kai was also taken away from the club. His charges are even more serious. I replied with 2 words, got it. A few seconds later, Zhang Mingyuan sent another message. Ruoyun, I want to thank you on behalf of my parents, and for myself. I'll remember everything you've done for the rest of my life. I stared at that message for a long time, then replied, not for you, for my mom. There was a pause on the other end, then 3 words, I know. I put away my phone and looked up. A full moon hung in the night sky, cold and clear, just like the moonlight from my past life. But tonight, the moonlight no longer felt like the icy, piercing lake water. Instead, it was a gentle, cool evening breeze. I took a deep breath and slowly exhaled the suffocating weight that had pressed against my chest for an entire lifetime. 3 days later, I went alone to a mall in the city center. As I passed by a maternity and baby store, the display window was filled with soft pink clothes and tiny shoes, so heartwarming it could melt anyone's heart. I stood in front of the window for a while, But what rose in my heart wasn't pity, it was a calm clarity. That child was innocent, everyone said so, but she carried the blood of Su Wanqing and Zhou Kai. The Zhang family wouldn't acknowledge him, and Zhou Kai was in jail awaiting trial. His fate was sealed with the original sin from the moment of birth, but this was no longer something I could concern myself with. I turned away from the store, bought an Americano at a cafe on the first floor, and sat by the floor-to-ceiling window, sipping it slowly. Outside, people hurried past, each with their own stories and worries. No one noticed me, and no one knew what kind of story this seemingly ordinary young girl had lived through. My phone vibrated. A message from Mom. "What do you want for dinner? I'll cook for you." I smiled and replied, "Sweet and sour ribs." Mom sent back a smiley face. I set down my phone and took another sip of coffee. Sunlight streamed through the window, warm against the back of my hand. I closed my eyes, savoring the warmth, savoring the reality of being alive. Everything from my past life was over. The person standing here now was Lin Ruoyun, reborn. I wouldn't forgive those who had hurt my family. Su Wanqing and Zhao Xilan would spend their deserved years in prison. Zhou Kai would pay for his crimes, and Zhao Yongqiang wouldn't escape the law either. But I didn't plan to spend the rest of my life consumed by hatred. Hatred had given me the strength to be reborn, but it couldn't be the sole reason for my existence. In this life, I would reclaim the stolen time, bit by bit, in my own way. Mom's stomach needed regular checkups. Every 3 months, I'd keep an eye on Dad's business. No more letting him be swindled. As for myself, I wanted to do the things I hadn't had time for in my past life. Maybe continue my studies, maybe travel, maybe find someone truly worth loving and love them well. In my past life, I closed my eyes in the icy lake, thinking it was all over. Now I knew, that was just the beginning of another story. The sunlight outside grew brighter. I finished the last sip of coffee, stood up, pushed open the door, and stepped into that warm light. Everything left behind, hatred, schemes, betrayal, death, stayed in yesterday, and tomorrow, it was just beginning. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.